Reed. She was kind of like the social butterfly of the community.
Of the community, oh yeah.
Talk a little bit about how those women would get together.
Well, they talked on the phone a lot. So
Party line.
we had an 8-party line. My mother could go 5 minutes and holding her breath, listening to what somebody else was saying. But she and Lucille Lane and Gladys Russell and your mom and I know others who kind of were the glue in the community. You know, they once we got a phone, they talked on the phone every day.
Yeah.
Somebody died. There was more food than you could ever eat at that house,
right.
you know, and they would organize that sort of stuff. One other thing that community baseball was big, and there was the first team I remember, there was a baseball, we call it Max Bottom. Right.
Matt Jones.
Yeah, you know, that field across,
Yeah.
see, it looked like a baseball field. And they had a baseball team there. And they played in the Loudon County League, played on Saturdays. A guy named Lloyd Jones was a terrific pitcher, and one of Ham Neal's actually signed, got to AAA. And then Mac didn't want him to play there anymore. So they came up on the hill where I live right now, and they made a baseball field. And that would have been 52 and 53. So they played baseball right out in front of my house, where my current house is. Had some good athletes, really good athletes, and many of them never went to high school. Ravenhouse Howard were absolutely terrific athletes who would have been great football players, and I don't think either one of them ever started to high school. And then their brother Ray, he was a terrific pitcher, and went in the Army, and he had a future, and he ruined his arm while he was playing baseball in the Army. But it was a big deal. Rusty and Hamp Russell, and Earl Russell, and Lloyd Jones, and Ham Mills, and Junior Mills, and all those guys, yeah. And Patsy Tuck. Your uncle? I guess your uncle Clyde.
Clyde.
They all called him Patsy.
I'd forgotten that, but you're right, they did.
I had no idea how he got that nickname.
I don't know, that's what they always, that's all I ever knew him by.
Right.
Yeah. And he played the mandolin, didn't he? Your dad played the guitar.
Yeah.
So occasionally in the store on a Saturday night, we would have Otch Watkins played the fiddle, and your dad played the guitar, and Patsy played the mandolin. So they would come, I don't know whoever else, but they'd have jam sessions in the store on a Saturday night.
Let's talk about just some of the interesting people in the community. Y'all mentioned tons already, but does any one person or group stand out as what you would call interesting people?
I saw on Facebook not long ago somebody had mentioned Otis and Odell, and you know, these twins that grew up out in the country, and they would go to Loudon and work for Mr. Greer and run errands for Charlie Arp and all this. They were known by everybody, you know, Otis and Odell.
Sarah's still alive.
Yes, I saw Sarah at the cemetery.
Sarah's still alive.
I don't remember the gentleman's name, but I remember, because I love horses, and there was a gentleman late at night. I had a little bedroom off to the side of the house, and we, of course, back then, no air conditioner, so we would sleep with our windows open. And I can remember a gentleman that would come by the road, and our road wasn't paved, it was a dirt road, so I would hear this clip-clop of a horse, and there would be this light-colored horse, and this gentleman would be laying on his horse, and that horse would just take him home at night. And so I asked my parents, and it was a gentleman who would go to a place and have too much to drink, and the people in the bar, wherever he went, would set him on that horse, and that horse would take him home. So I remember listening at nighttime to the sound of that clip-clop, clip-clop. And I thought it was so neat. That horse, it's like a movie star horse, you know. It was taking him home and everything. So,
I remember his name.
No, and Guy Bishop, he lived, gosh, what area would I say that Guy Bishop lived?
Well, it's now Bishop Road, it's just right up the road from the
Well,
house.
but he would come every Sunday, him and his brothers and some group of friends, and they would ride their horses. Well, I would stand down at the end of the road and I would say, "Can I ride your horse? Can I ride your horse?" And he would always be so sweet to me. He'd say, "Well, honey, they're kind of fresh right now. On our way back home, we'll stop." And he would stop on the way back, and he would let me ride those poor tired horses around my yard, because I was just horse crazy back then. Roy Rogers was a big hero back then and all. And so he would do that for me. And so I got in trouble for doing that, because my dad said, "Don't be down there bothering people." And so instead of being down at the house, I'd go down the road, and then I'd stop and say, "Can I ride your horse?" Thinking I wouldn't get in trouble, but I still got in trouble again, so I had to stop doing that. But I mean, Guy Bishop, I just remember they were so good to me about letting me ride their horses, and I was, so enthralled. And I still have horses today, but he was the one that would let me ride and all, and he was so kind. He was so kind to a little girl, so
Yeah.
I remember that.
Guy Bishop could do anything. He was a mechanic, carpenter, plumber. He was so talented. He also could drink.
Well, he probably knew the guy on the horse then.
I probably did. Margaret, his wife's still alive. She's in her upper 90s.
Oh, that's
She's a
awesome.
nice lady.
Oh, unbelievably nice lady, yeah. I mean, he could just do anything. If you had something needed to be fixed, call a guy. He had a garage up there. He worked on cars for people. Verb Simpson, y'all remember Verb? Verb Simpson, of course, he had a farm right there near the church, and had renters who actually did the farming. He liked to brag a lot. Once upon a time, he drank a lot, and Miss Sarah told him if he didn't quit drinking, she was leaving him, and he actually quit and never drank anymore.
Wow.
Yeah, and the Richies, in the church, Walter Ritchie's family, Ben and Andy, and the Bethel Church was Richies and Lanes. And then some of the rest of us scattered in, but there
Bigger
were a lot
families.
there were a lot of Lanes and a lot of Richies who went to Bethel Church.
Edna Lane would do the church plays when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Walter Ritchie was my grandmother's oldest brother.
Oh, really?
And they were raised Methodist, and later my grandmother became a Baptist, and she was a shouting Baptist, and so they said, well, there used to be shouting Methodist. But yeah, they, I don't know when that change occurred, that she changed from being a Methodist to a Baptist, but her brother and several of them, I think, were Methodist.
My dad would come to Sunday, so my dad closed the store from 9:30 until noon on Sunday. That's the only time the store was closed. He was there at 6:30 in the morning, gone at 7 o'clock at night. And then, of course, we'd have people buying a lot of bologna at 12:30 on Sunday. My dad went to Sunday school, but he didn't go to church. And I don't know if y'all remember the big oak trees with the rocks under them where the men sat. Y'all remember those? That? Well, there were some huge oak trees away from the Jackson School side of Bethel Church, and there were big rocks under there, and Walter Ritchie didn't stay for preaching either. So he and my dad, and I don't know who else, would sit on the rocks out there. And I remember my dad telling me one time, I said to Walter, is he done yet? Walter said, well, he's done, but he ain't quit.
Oh, that reminds me of another church memory of the little community out there, Jackson Chapel Church. You were talking about your dad sitting on the rocks and all. Well, I remember I would go with my grandmother to Jackson's Chapel, and one of the things that is now humorous about the way they did things, they didn't have air conditioning either, and so in the summer they would have the windows open, and some of the men didn't come inside at all. They stayed outside and smoked.
Right.
And just kind of looked in the windows at what was going on, but
My
they
dad and Walter
just
Richie.
they would just be smoking and watching what was going on inside, but didn't go in.
Yeah.